Hey friends, Jeff here with a new episode of the My Impossible podcast. Today we welcome Josephine Hunt. Josephine is an educator here in Bergen County, New Jersey for over 22 years. Over the years, Josephine has become a leading voice in the world of resilience, building resilience in students. She is a dedicated educational leader and a parenting coach committed to supporting families and students to build a level of resilience that makes them unstoppable in life. This is a different kind of episode for us. Josephine is not someone who lives with a physical disability or is personally facing a physical challenge that they're seeking to overcome. But what she brings today in our conversation, I believe, are central keys to our children and to us as adults who are facing hard things. And she brings into focus the practice of resilience and changes the narrative from resilience being about strength to be resilience is a practice that is developed just like a muscle is as we begin exercise. Josephine to me is the word bold. It is bold to do the work that she's doing. It's be so easy just to continue to pacify and to keep safe our children, but she is bold in challenging them to step into hard things and build resilience. I think you're really going to love this conversation with Josephine Hunt. Josephine Hunt, welcome to the show. So happy to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And with that, what is your impossible?
So, with your podcast, the impossible that I carry is about resiliency for our students. So, as an educator for over 22 years, as well as a parent of children that are in their 20s, I've just noticed a very big dip in resiliency in our students. And right from the beginning, like when I was 19, I started to see like how educators can have the best intention, but sometimes with the best intention, we're not using our most effective implementation. And so my impossible is just to bring more awareness to parents and educators in how to help build resiliency for their students and children.
Mm. Would you define terms are important because I'm sure who those that are listening have their own view of it. For you, what's the definition or working definition of resilience?
So in this aspect, specifically with our students, resilience really is how to overcome areas of discomfort, areas of challenge, areas of mistakes and failures, specifically in the academic domain, since, I wanted to hone in a little bit more. And so, how educators can best support their students in how to overcome those areas of difficulties. And so, what we're seeing is that teachers with the best intentions are taking away those discomforts because they want their students to feel successful and comfortable and wanting to take on more challenges and risks. However, when we take away those small discomforts, it ends up being disabling and really harmful in the way of with the bigger challenges. And so I know you have children in the school ages too, and I was just wondering what were your observations with that as well? Like, have you seen the education system have like the best intention, but sometimes may not be as effective?
Mm, yeah, I love the question. So my girls are 18 and 14. So one is a senior, one is an eighth grader. And it's interesting. I don't see it as much from the education system as I do from my desire and the desires of my peer group of parents to ease discomfort. And I love that simple frame that you've put on it of easing discomfort, taking away discomfort, or challenge or the hard. Um, and again, I love your frame of it with the best intentions, with love in our hearts and a desire for people to do well. So that's what I see on my side, more from a peer group perspective, of the peers of parents. I guess the question that comes up for me, because again, the name of the show and our mission is around my impossible. So the question was impossible. Why, what is it about it that at moments feels impossible?
Well, I guess not I guess, but this is really where, research and data has been showing up, that the impossible part is that we're seeing our students with major increases of hopelessness, depression, anxiety, frustration, tension. And with the numbers being at 40% of suicidal thoughts, uh, educators are afraid and out of fear, have the best intention to let their students live in like the discomfort and the productive struggle of really just normal and everyday life benchmarks. And because of this delicacy, it's become very challenging for educators to recognize, like, when can I keep pushing a little bit more? When can I provide some more time and space for my students to have that productive struggle? When is it not an emotionally detrimental situation? And in most cases, the work that our students are doing, where there are mistakes and challenges and failures and productive struggle, in most cases, it ends up becoming a very positive outcome. When we as educators, and this is where sometimes the impossible comes in, when we as educators, when we put too much emphasis on the product rather than the process, we end up harming our students, again, without intention. So, for example, a teacher in third grade would say, you need to learn this lesson and you need to do really well on this lesson in order to do good on the state test. And if you do really well on the state test, that means you go to the next grade level. If you go to the next grade level, you could get to middle school and so forth. So we keep emphasizing with good intention, right, that if we do well on the product, that it will then give us success and happiness. And truly, that's really not where it comes from. As you know, the work that we do, people that are passionate about their work are really not doing it for the actual product. It's more for like an intrinsic reward. And so if we can just stay at teaching our students to be have those intrinsic rewards of just being learners and just enjoying the work of learning and the evolution of that, it will be so much more effective than if we say it towards a, like, a product of like a good grade, or making someone proud. That's another area that I found that has become even more, of a challenge, and I'm working on that impossible as well, is that our students are becoming more and more looking for approval and praise from outside rather than inside. And so as educators, we really need to be a coach to help our students drive from themselves, like, how do you feel about your work? How do you feel about what you've done so far? And give them that time and space to really harvest that intrinsic motivation. Because if they're always looking out, we're not teaching them to look in, right? The best kind of work is like figuring out what works for you. We're so uniquely different as humans. There's a great book called Uniquely Human. I recommend it so highly. It just really identifies, like, yes, are we all the same humans? Yes, but our characteristics and variables are so unique to ourselves. And so when we just listen to what someone else says just to do it because this is what worked for me, it's probably not the best way to go with it. But helping someone like understand, like asking them the right questions to get to what works for you like individually is very, very effective.
Mm. Something struck me as you were talking about this, why it's impossible, and I'll reflect it back to you. What's coming up for me? It feels impossible that if even if I gave you, Josephine Hunt, today a magic wand, to wave over all classrooms around North Jersey, the United States, and every teacher was committed to what you are putting forward. Every teacher. It feels impossible to me because I'm going to blame myself as a parent and my peers as parents because we as parents helicopter too much. We solve problems. The internet, and I know you do a lot of work on the impact of devices, the internet and social media puts this, you talked about seeking validation from the outside rather than the inside, having this beautiful but horrible mechanism of the social media and the internet is stacking the odds against this magic that you just performed. So that feels like, oh, yeah, this feels impossible that Josephine's doing great work and the educators she's working with are doing great work, but we as parents and the and culture and the internet at large are counteracting what you're doing in the classroom. Am I eh, am I reading that right? That piece of it is also part of what makes your task, your mission in the world somewhat impossible.
It is because it's such a big area, right? Like it's a big abstract way of thinking. And truly with whenever I'm reading where like a lot of this stems from, it comes from fear. So parents and educators have this fear that if they allow their students to have challenges and failures and struggles, that they may end up becoming in a mental crisis, right? Where like suicide can happen or eating disorders or even self-harm. And if we keep intervening without having these small challenges to build the resilience, it's going to be very difficult for our students to build resilience to get through difficult situations. And so resilience is really like a muscle. So if when you want to like improve your strength, you start somewhere, you benchmark where you can be successful, and then you increase. Like, so for example, if you start with 5-pound weights, when you initially start with 5-pound weights, you might be a little discomfort, you have discomfort, and then you continuously work on that, and then you build strength and you build stamina and you build resilience, and then you become comfortable with that 5 pounds. Well, what do you do to continue that growth? You increase the weight, right? So you increase the challenges. And in life, we know that the challenges at 5 years old look very different than 13 years old, look very different than someone going to college, looks very different than a 25-year-old young adult. And in this domain, I consider children under the age of 25. So even though they're considered 18, 21, 25 is when your brain is fully developed with all of those regulatory behaviors and like the neurological synapses that are occurring. So in this like setting, I'm talking about youth in up until age 25. And so we have to be as educators very mindful and proactive and really strategically place these situations so our students are having these challenges, having the mistakes, having the failures, having the time and space to deal with that discomfort and to figure out what's going to work for them to get past it. And that's the resilience loop. So we come across a challenge, right? And then we deal with the discomfort of that emotion, whatever it is. We should not fear that for our students. We should almost embrace it. Like, yes, like you're uncomfortable with this mistake. You made a failure. Okay, let's sit with that. It's okay to have a failure, right? Let our students come to that. Because if we impose that on them too soon, like they need to get there themselves. And then they'll come up with, you coach them with good questions, deep questions, like, how do you feel about that? What do you want to do about it? What's your next step? Coaching questions rather than telling. So not helicoptering, not snow plowing, not paving the path, but helping them with guiding coaching questions so they can get to what works for them. Because it's very fascinating when you ask your children, under the age of 25, like, how do they want to deal with this challenge? How do they want to deal with this failure per se? And it really takes away that work for you because as a parent or as an educator, because now you know that what they chose is going to be more effective because it's related to their specific, unique humanness. So right. So if we can really just lean back as a coach and provide the support like that, it is way more effective.
Mm. It it feels like there's a premise that people are operating by when actually the inverse is true. That the premise it feels like you're describing that people commonly operate on is if I let my child or student face a challenge, it's going to take them into a spiral of negativity, of mental health challenge, etc. But what I'm hearing is that from you, you tell me if I'm hearing you wrong, it's actually the inverse,
Yeah.
that having them face the challenge, face the difficulty, the choice, all of that is actually what's going to support them to not go into that spiral of negativity and potential mental challenges. Am I like, am I hearing that right? Am I getting that?
Yes. So, like, there's a clear discrepancy between how we support our students, right? So, I don't want to say like we're hands off. The coaching strategy or implementation is you're still running alongside your students,
Yes.
just like a parent would, but we're not doing it for them. So, in more comfortable times, those conversations are very rich. So when I coached cheerleading, right, and I had students that were in middle school. I mean, there were a lot of challenges there. And so during practice, it was very formal. So those situations where there were challenges like socially and emotionally, I couldn't really work through because we were on on a formal schedule. But on those, like, down times where we would just, like, go for hot chocolate after, like, a game or so forth, that's where great conversations happened, and that's where the coaching comes in, where we can help our students and children work through whatever is happening with them. So, to be more specific, I had a cheerleader who, became very, very popular, and she, was almost over her head at one point, and I remember she was just changing as a person, and she was just saying, like, how she started to dislike herself, how she wanted to quit cheering. And so, during non-practice times and during game times, we would have small conversations at like Dunkin' Donuts, like, when the girls would just spread out and so forth. And she wanted to quit because she didn't like who she's become, that she became very mean and she's constantly on social media and, that she's not the same person at home. And even her parents have felt like very like uncomfortable with how she's behaving. And I was, like, very proud that she recognized these behaviors in herself because that's very mature for someone to see, but she wanted to quit the team initially. And I said, "Okay, is this how did you come to this? How did you come to this decision of just quitting the team?" And she said that, "I just can't take this pressure anymore. I can't take who I am." And I said, "Well, how could you come up with another way to kind of, like, keep staying with it? What are other ways you can go through it?" And she ended up finding different strategies of like how does she alleviated herself through different areas. Like, so she didn't show up to all the social things. She removed herself from some of the social media applications. And she started to regulate herself and felt back to her own self. But she wanted to quit because of the discomfort of what she was feeling. So it was a very like I didn't have hands off. I wasn't like, "Oh, this is your problem. You got there. Deal with it." I just coached her through different ways that she can come up with that worked for her to be successful.
Mm,
But it's a little
yeah.
scary when you're hearing like, "I hate myself. I don't
Mhm.
wanna do this anymore. I really don't like who I am in my life." Like, in one way, I did question myself, like, if this child hurts herself, right? She was a 7th grader, and I know this information, I could be liable, and this could have been it coulda went another way, but I believed in myself and I believed in her, and, like, that was a big impossible part to me because I was really nervous that I could have been missing a bigger step, but I know that I'm very, like, observant and I look and listen without interpretation. There's a book called, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective, People,
Mhm.
and it's a very fascinating book. But one of the things that the author really nails home is that we need to listen and look not to make meaning, but to really gain the understanding of what the other person is trying to communicate. And
Mm.
so, I really try to practice that because we kind of impose our own thinking. We're comfortable with coming up with a label. Oh, she's depressed. Oh, he has self-harm behaviors. We want to create a label because it makes us comfortable. But that's what I was saying. Like, we need to be comfortable with our discomfort in order to help others.
So a lot of our audience are, those that are facing their own impossible challenges, difficulty, discomfort. Um, so we've talked so far a lot about the strategies of whether it be a parent or an educator. Um, let's speak to the individual again, student, person with a disability, person facing a challenge. What are the elements for the individual to build resilience within themselves as they're facing difficulty? Because it kind of is this idea of, you can lead a horse to water, or you can, teach them, or that's I got that the metaphor, the phrase wrong. It's the fishing one. You can give a man a fish, but if you teach a man how to fish, they're going to fish for the rest of their lives. So, how do you support an individual, and what are the elements of that for them, they themselves, to develop and build resilience?
Well, that's why it's important to have anchor adults for, for our young people, anyone under the age of 25. And anchor adults are those people who will teach you how to fish and who will also be there to support you and accept you for who you are. And so sometimes it's not the parents, right? And sometimes it's not the teachers. And these are not bad things. These are not bad people. It's just sometimes it's very hard when it's your own child that is showing these kinds of like hard emotions of possible suicide, possible depression, possible anxiety or self-harm, that it's sometimes hard to be objective and effective to these students or children that you have this very strong emotional tie to. So what's super important is that these children under the age of 25 have strong anchor adults who can teach them how to fish, who can teach them like how, bring the horse to water and then figure out how do you want to get your water. And so that to me is like what I've found that has been like the most effective. Now, as a teacher and as a coach as well, there are some students that I recognize that were beyond my help because I got too emotionally involved. Like I was too worried about them. And I recognized I couldn't then help them effectively because I was afraid of what they can possibly do as self harm. So then I had to bring it to a higher level. So having like self resilience is super important to know that who you can turn to, who's going to help you, not by doing it for you, not by removing the difficulty, but by like a good coach who can get you from like A to B through your own self, through what your strategies are, what works for your body.
Mm. So I love it, but let me just say, I'm 51 years old and I need an anchor adult. At times, as skilled as I am as a coach and as a leader, I need somebody twice the age of that 25-year-old, I need an anchor adult. So I totally understand your lane and your focus on those 25 and under, but I would just say we all need anchor adults.
Yes,
And
yes.
and and it's not about age even. I get anchoring. There's a young man in his 20s who at times has been an anchor adult for me.
Mhm.
So I love that strategy. So take us even deeper. So if have an anchor adult is one of the ways to build resilience within ourselves, what are some of the other practices or strategies for an individual, whether it be a student or again, an old guy like me, to put into play to build resilience in the face of hard things? Because the world is a really hard place and it's only getting harder.
I'm with you on the anchor adult. I have one too. I think everyone could use a coach, honestly. I'm not trying to sell that, but I mean, I have my own coach as well. And because I know when I can't be logical or objective for myself, I need to be realistic with that. So I think that's really step one is to like to be aware that, as humans, we're emotional, right? And we can be like not logical and we could be subjective, not objective. So to be mindful of that, what we like, I mean, if Michael Jordan needs a coach, like everybody could use a coach to like help themselves just improve themselves. Um, being mindful of putting yourself in areas that are like, safe risk taking. Like that's going to increase your resilience by tremendous amounts. Things that are going to put you out of your comfort zone, right? Like so and you have to look at where you are in your life and what you're doing. And say like, okay, I've already mastered this and I've been in this comfortable position. What can I do next to expand and evolve myself as a person? And so being like very proactive and mindful in these challenges is just builds your resilience naturally and organically. And so I think where it comes to like students though, adults we have to, maybe our coach needs to push us a little bit more, or as adults like we need to be more mindful and like strategize to make sure that we have these situations. And it doesn't necessarily mean like, take on rock climbing or what have you, but just to do things out of your comfort zone really just expands you and evolves you. Like I never expected to be on CNN. Like talk about out of my comfort zone. I'm comfortable in my classroom, but to be on national TV, I kept saying to myself like I don't need to do this, but I knew I had to. It had to build my resilience. If I'm speaking about it, I need to live it. And no matter how uncomfortable I was, I had to figure it out. And was it perfect? No, far from it, but I evolved from it and now I can grow from it. So as adults, and I'm 50, so I got you there. I'm very like it's being like proactively mindful about building your resilience and placing yourself in situations where you're going to be uncomfortable, but you figure out the strategies on how to get through it, and it evolves you to the next challenge and it makes you successful. You use the tools that worked and you refine the tools that could be better.
Yeah. I'm doing a TED Talk next month, and it's on resilience, and one of my premises is that resilience is not about performing in the face of hard things. Resilience is a practice that you employ when hard things come. And as you're laying out, number one, who you surround yourself with, an anchor adult or adults plural, um, the practice of putting yourself in situations that stretch you, that make you uncomfortable, that are hard. I love that you're taking the mythology out of this word resilience, like be strong, hold it together. Um, and you're bringing it down to something and things that are very practical.
Yes, resilience is not about just getting through something. It's really not. It's all that happens in within that. And so, yeah, for sure. I don't want anybody thinking like, oh, I have to be tough and tough it out and make sure that it's perfect at the end. Not at all. Resilience is just really, working through the challenging difficulties and just really celebrating that, what you've accomplished from that regardless of like the product and just building those strategies on like how you can handle on you know different challenges next time.
Mm. Eh, we love on this show to get to the heart of why things matter to people. And you've been an educator for a long time. Take us to the heart. Maybe it's a story early on, maybe it's with your own daughters, but take us to what an experience that was powerful in flipping the switch for you to say, "This is gonna be my life's work."
So as an educator and a coach of cheerleaders, all ages, I realized that the work was really important because having people stronger and believe in themselves no matter how difficult things can be, to believe in your own self to get through it, to me was very critical. And so, my one daughter, she was a senior and she was in an internship. And while she was in an internship, she had this gentleman that would come to the store and he started becoming a stalker to her. And we just kind of were listening to her stories at dinner time. And and this is like a really bad parenting moment, but I just didn't fully buy into the stories because I said, like, she's just a typical kid. Like, why would someone be doing this to her? Like, there are people that are more intelligent, more attractive, more like worth seeking per se. And so she would share these stories, and my other 2 daughters were really concerned. They were like, these are, like, really substantial things that she's saying that he knows, when she works, he knows her car, he knows the hours she's there. That he even asked, like, her coworkers, like, did she take on extra hours and so forth. So she would share these stories with us, and my husband's a police officer, so this became even a bigger conversation. And so we started talking about it, especially when my other 2 daughters were really bringing it to our forefront, and they were saying, like, "Don't, like, aren't you afraid for her?" And, I was afraid for her, and so was my husband being a police officer. But I had to believe in what she was sharing with us, that she came up with her own strategies of how to be safe. But in any event, what ended up happening was her manager and boss, they got very, very concerned, and they approached him a number of times, and he wasn't changing his behaviors. And so they called the high school that my daughters were in, and they said to the principal, she needs to be removed from this situation because this is dangerous. He's following her home. She's seeing his car and she drives into the police station because she sees his car behind her. And so the principal called me up and he said, he thought I didn't know anything. So he said, I just wanted to update you on what's happening with your daughter. And I said to him, I said, with all due respect, I know the whole story. I sort of knew that he was following her home too, or, and she was driving to the police station. And he had this huge pause. He's like, "How did you not stop this whole thing?" Like, he's like, "Your husband's a policeman, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Why didn't you, like, intervene? Like, you should have called us, or have her stop going or call the police yourself." And again, it was one of those risks that I took, but I really believed in that she had the right strategies. If she wasn't coming to me saying, "I need to be removed from this setting." And so she believed in her own skills and strategies to get herself through safety. And so I said that to him. I said, I don't know what can possibly happen. Like, yes, this can be a statistic. This can be a very negative outcome. But at this point, she's come up with her own strategies and, like, she feels pretty comfortable and confident in what she's been implementing. She drives to the police station when she feels that he's near her, and she'll go in and they've been recording it. And so he said, "I'm going to pull her out of this internship because I can't have this." The police, they contacted me, and I said, "I really want her to come to that decision." And because we didn't agree with him, she continued the internship, and the police were involved and they stopped his behavior. He ended up moving, I mean, long after that. But the bottom line is we were taking away her skills and strategies because we were imposing what we thought was best for her. When in essence, she was coming up with her own work. And at any point, if she really felt that she was in danger, she would have pulled herself out. And she said that. She goes, I don't feel like that yet. And so, and we were all like, what does that mean? What measurement is that? Because that yet could be like a fatal outcome. And so, but I couldn't unwaver from feeling what she felt. Like, I had to believe in her skill and strategy because if I started to waver, like if I start to show my fear on her, that's going to change her abilities. Like, her cleverness, I was very impressed. Like, I don't know if I would have done that. I would have probably removed myself from that internship. But her resilience to me is more impressive than anything I've done because that's a fearful situation. And again, I'm not saying that resilience is about taking risks and putting yourself in danger. I'm saying if you're in a situation where you feel that you genuinely are able to manage and deal with the stresses of it and stay like emotionally healthy and well and safe, then you should keep pushing until you feel like there's any other way that may be of danger to you. And so I commended her because, like I said, would I have done that at 17? and he was 34, probably not.
Mm. Yeah, it's hard. So I just want to acknowledge, and I think you would do the same thing, acknowledge to all those parents and educators out there that what we're asking them to do, what you're challenging them to do is not simple.
No,
Well, it's hard. It's hard to allow things to unfold in the lives of those we care about with the thought in mind in the end, this is going to serve them. This is going to serve them. So this is hard work. You're challenging us all to do the hard work. And what I'm also hearing is it's worth it.
100%. A
Would
100.
you just talk about the payoff that you've seen, whether it be in students you've worked with, um, cheerleaders who have gone on, I mean, you've probably have cheerleaders in their 30s now,
Yeah.
in their 20s and 30s. Can you talk about the payoff that you've witnessed in the lives of those that you've been intentional about developing their resilience?
So that one 7th grader, she still stays in contact with me because she really feels that I've helped shaped her life and her confidence. And I appreciate that, but that to me wasn't important. And she went on to being a cheerleader in college where the demands and challenges are way bigger. And she'll every like once a month or so, she'll call me or, text me. And she says that she can handle the pressure so much better. Whereas she's seeing her teammates like going into either like substance abuse to deal with the stress and anxiety of cheering on a college level, possibly even, cutting themselves. And so to build the resilience of that cumulative work, it has to start right when they're young.
Mm,
And it pays off because life gets more complex. Life gets complicated and challenging and painful. And so, now we're talking about like, I mean, right now, like in my, in the Bergen County area, like we have a lot of kids who are in middle school, high school, who are really afraid of their parents being deported and taken. So that's a major fear. And so it's, we have to really like recognize like that's resilience to work through something like that. And I'm not saying not to feel that fear. Of course, you have to feel fear. We're human first. But how do we get through without harming ourselves or taking substance abuse, or falling into this like depression pit or hopelessness? Like, how do we teach our kids to work through that? And again, it's not about like be stronger, be harder, like get through it, but it's about, like take one step forward, keep progressing forward, and, practicing the pause, remembering we're human. We're supposed to feel first, right? And like, so as soon as you feel something like fearful or anxiety inducing, accept it. I'm a human first. I'm supposed to feel. But I think we take that away too soon. And so that's where like the medications come in so fast. Like, oh, my kid is like depressed and or is it typical? So we have to be very mindful of what's going on there.
mm. Josephine, as we wrap, I'm going to give you the floor to extend an invitation towards in this journey towards resilience to those that are listening, whether they be a parent, an educator, or an individual who's facing a mountain in their life. What's your invitation to them?
To take on the challenges. Be mindful and proactive because in the word impossible is I'm possible. And we
Mm,
have to believe in the power of humans. We cannot take away someone's resilience because of fear. Let them do that work. It's very important to have productive struggle.
I love that. So simple, scary, I no doubt, but so powerful. Josephine, if folks are listening and they want to know more about you and your work, where can we send them?
I have a website, www.josephinehunt.com. So Josephine Hunt, all one word.com. I also have a YouTube channel that has all my media as well as other videos. So I would love if you need any help just to reach out to me.
We'll absolutely put those locations in the show notes. This is a gift. It's a gift for me as a dad, as a human who's taking on hard things. So, and I know it's a gift for our audience. So, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and everything that you're so passionate about.
Thank you so much for having me, and truly, anytime you need any help, I'm part of the coaching, so thank you so much.